Welcome to our game today. We're looking at an incredible game played by Mikhail Botvinnik in the USA versus USSR radio chess match in 1945, where he played this variation so well. In fact, he played over 99% against his compatriot Arnold Denker from America, that this variation was named after him. And not only that, he found a vicious way to conclude this game with a beautiful winning tactic. Now, this game, as we said, was between the 10 best masters from the USA and from the USSR. USA feeling quite confident because they had won the last four Olympiads before this game, but they found out to their horror that the USSR masters were by far superior. Now, in this game, we have the Queen Gambit declined, which is basically the semi-slav, and semi-slav accepted. So we get d4, d5, c4, e6, knight e3, c6, knight f3, knight f6, bishop to g5, d takes c4, and then we get e4 by Denker. And this is the semi-slav defense accepted, the Botvinnik variation. And as he said, Botvinnik played this so well, they named it after him. So we get b5 by Botvinnik, protecting the pawn, e5 by Denker, attacking the knight, of course, because now, of course, we are pinning the knight to our queen, so we get h6. So you've got some options here of how you want to play it. You can take the h-pawn with the bishop, you can take the knight with the bishop, you can take the knight with the pawn. But in the game, Denker drops back, keeping the pin alive, and we get g5 by Botvinnik. We get knight takes g5 and pawn takes, and the bishop takes back on g5, keeping the pin, so sacking the knight for 2 pawns. Denker wanting to keep this tricky position going. Now, in this position, there's many different ways to play this, but in the game, Botvinnik plays a knight to d7. Now we get e takes f6 and bishop to b7. So here we see Denker is up a pawn, and he's got a nice little 9 pawn here in this position. So seemingly you would think Botvinnik's on the back foot, but no, we're in theory here. Well, this is modern theory. At the time it was not. We get bishop to e2, we get queen to b6, we get castles, long castles by Botvinnik, and in the game we get a4 by Denker, really trying to push his advantage. Now, a much better move in this position is actually bishop to f3, a bishop to f3, just attacking down this diagonal. And from here on in, we see the difference when a master understands positions well, and this is all about positional moving uh, in this game, because we see a4 is a mistake. Why is a4 a mistake? And we're going to see why the bishop on f3, not having it there, is a big mistake for Denker in the long run. So we get a4, which is classified as a mistake now, and we get b4 by Botvinnik, attacking the knight. So the knight now has to jump to e4. So we get knight to e4, and we get c5 by Botvinnik. So now we're seeing why having this bishop here, not here, is a mistake, because we're now attacking the knight. The knight is going to have to move, which means this pawn is going to be able to capture this. And now you're going to have 3 of black's pawns on the 4th rank, bearing down the middle, just off to the side of the board. So, and here we see another mistake by Denker, because instead of maybe moving his knight out of the way, we see as well that he makes a positional mistake yet again. And again, we're seeing all of these little mistakes by Denker are going to add up to a very bad position. So we get queen to b1, and in this position we get c7 by Botvinnik, and the pressure's on already. See, a better move in this position would have been to drop your knight back in this position. Maybe the computer doesn't really like a whole lot of the moves as possible. Computer, in fact, prefers d2. But in this position, we see checkmate is threatened, so we have to back the knight to g3. Now, knight to g3 is a mistake because now it opens up to d4. So in this position, can you see what would be the best move for white to play here? So white rightly takes the pawn. Of course, you can't take the bishop back because that allows you to win the queen and with check afterwards. So Botvinnik here obviously decides to take the move to go to c6. Now, of course, there's another way to play this, which is to, if you decided to take, um, and after the queen checks here, you could block with the knight, uh, but black is really losing in this position, no matter what way you look at it. Even though Denker would only be +2 in terms of points of material, he would be clearly losing the game. So in the game, after the bishop takes, we get Botvinnik decides to go to c6, which is attacking here and is making a mating threat. So here again, we see the disadvantage of not having our bishop here on f3, and so this move here, pawn to f3, is had to play it, and this is yet another weakening move, which we will see will all add to the demise of our poor master Arnold Denker. We get d3 now by Botvinnik, with the idea of playing d3 is that you're now threatening checking the king and winning the bishop on playing c5. So what we get here is c1 by Denker, protecting his two bishops here. Of course, likewise, you couldn't have taken that pawn. You had to protect that because otherwise it's all over. So here we get c1, but in this position we get a brilliant move. Well, it's not a brilliant move, it's a great move of bishop to c5 check. So the king now has to go to h1, and really Botvinnik is just destroying Denker here. Small mistakes that Denker's made, but he is absolutely being crushed in this position. Here we get queen to d6, now threatening to win the piece because of course the pawn is pinned to the king, and with this bishop also controlling this square, white is in all sorts of trouble. So here Denker, after a bit of a think, played queen to f4. Now queen to f4 looks like it tidies up the whole position, but it really doesn't. In fact, there's a brilliant move here that Botvinnik plays that completely just ends the game on the spot. Can you find it? I'll give you a few seconds. An absolutely wonderful move. Now keep in mind the position and where white's king is. Can you see what it is? Well, it's the wonderful rook takes h2. Brilliant move and check, which means the only move that Denker can play is to take the rook. So after rook to h8 check, well, you're really stuck. You can't block with the bishop because this bishop is stopping the run out, which is very simply you win the queen, so you can't play that position. So the only move to play here is to give up your queen, and after rook takes, bishop takes, Botvinnik played the rather dirty move, as you might say, of playing queen to f4, attacking both the bishops, and in this position Denker resigned. What a wonderful game this was by Botvinnik, and a really interesting game it was indeed in this match, which USSR won by the wonderful score of 15.5 to 4.5, and America really realized that, well, there's a change in guard in the best chess players in the world, and USSR went on to dominate for decades afterwards.